At 6:08 a.m. on a Tuesday, my HOA president aimed her champagne Lexus at my 9-year-old daughter's snow village and drove through it like she was flattening a speed bump, then rolled her window down and told me to read my covenants as if she'd just done me a favor. Yeah, that happened. The whole cul-de-sac heard the engine. Half the neighborhood saw the snow explode, and my kid stood there holding a scarf, like she couldn't understand why grown-ups were allowed to be cruel. And the wild part is she thought I'd do what everyone else did. Swallow it. Pay it stay quiet. She had no idea the HOA authority she worshipped had already expired on paper, and she was about to learn that in front of witnesses, phones, and a deputy who wasn't in the mood for suburban royalty. My name's Ryan Carter. I'm 36. I wire houses and fix panels for a living. I'm the guy who smells like drywall dust and coffee most days. And after my divorce, I was just trying to build something stable for my kid. You know what I mean? Ellie is 9. She's the kind of kid who names her snowmen, like they're real people. She'll give them personalities. She'll tuck a scarf around them like they get cold. And I swear she puts more care into a snowman than some adults put into their marriages. We moved into Hawthorne Glen because it looked like peace. Nice streets, decent schools, neighbors with porches. The whole fresh start fantasy. And I believed it because I wanted to believe it. I'd scraped together everything I had for that house, and when you're staring at your bank account after a divorce, you don't buy a dream lightly. Moving day. Ellie ran through the empty living room yelling, "This is my art studio," while I dragged boxes and tried to pretend I wasn't terrified. And for about 20 minutes, it really did feel like a new chapter. Then I heard the click, click, click of heels on concrete, that sound that tells you somebody is approaching with purpose, and when I looked up there, she was Melissa Granger, HOA president. Hair, perfect smile, tight clipboard, tucked under her arm like a weapon scanning my property before she even said hello. "Mr. Carter." "Welcome to Hawthorne Glen," she said, like she was greeting me at the gate of a country club. Not my own driveway, then she nodded toward my trash bin, sitting near the garage, because I hadn't even found the kitchen yet. Bins cannot be visible from the street ever. We have standards here. I laughed a little, because I honestly thought she was doing a bit like some friendly neighborhood joke about rules. But she didn't laugh back. She just stared. Then she added, "You'll want to read your covenants. It saves everyone time." That was day 1. By day 7, I had a fine $95 photo attached time-stamped, like it was evidence in a trial bin, visible 2 hours past pickup window. And I stood there in my kitchen holding that paper, thinking seriously, we're doing this. I paid it because what else do you do when you're brand new and you're exhausted and you don't want drama? Then Ellie made a wreath for the door, red and gold. She spent an entire Saturday twisting ribbon and smiling like she was building a masterpiece. And Melissa hit us with $80 for non-approved metallic tones, because apparently the shade of gold we used was offensive to property values. And I had to take it down while Ellie watched me, her face going from proud to confused to hurt in about 3 seconds. Then Ellie discovered driveway chalk, and one night she wrote, "Welcome home, Dad," in giant purple letters across our driveway. And I'm not going to lie, I stared at those letters like they were medicine, because that's what it felt like maybe we were going to be okay. The next morning. Sharp knock, knock, knock. Not a friendly knock, either. The kind of knock that says you owe me, and Melissa was there. Holding another notice, the temporary ground decoration must be removed before sunset. She said, "Oh, it's flat, fine, and it's $250. I blinked at her. "It's chalk," I said. "It's visible, she replied, like visibility itself was the crime. Then, she glanced past me at Ellie, peeking around my leg with her stuffed rabbit, and didn't even soften, didn't even do the fake smile for the child. She just turned and walked away, heels clicking, leaving that weird, sweet perfume hanging in the air like a warning. For a while, I kept telling myself it was just a strict HOA, annoying, but manageable, because that's what people tell themselves when they're trying to survive. Right? You normalize it. You shrink your life down to fit the rules you tell your kid. It's fine. You say, we'll just be careful, like careful is supposed to protect you from a person who enjoys control. December hit the first real snow, and Ellie went outside like she'd been released into Disneyland. She didn't build one. Snowman. She built a whole snow village, a family, a little castle, tiny snow dogs lined up like they were holding hands. She used buttons from one of my old work shirts. She begged our neighbor June Whitaker for a scarf, and June, sweet woman in her 70s, handed Ellie a bright blue one with this soft smile, like she'd been waiting to see kids enjoy the neighborhood again. Ellie stepped back, hands on her hips, cheeks pink from the cold, and said, "Dad, this is our town." And for a second, I believed her. I really did. Next morning, notice under my windshield wiper, unauthorized temporary structure remove within 24 hours. Fine, 200 ton. And I just stood there, staring at it, trying to find the part that was supposed to be funny. I paid it again because at that point, I thought the fines were like bad weather. You don't argue with weather, you just deal with it. Ellie rebuilt smaller, closer to the porch, then smaller again, near the side yard, and I thought maybe Melissa would get bored. But bullies don't get bored. They get creative. 2 days later, at 6:08 a.m., I heard an engine rev too hard for a sleepy street. That aggressive roar that doesn't belong in a quiet cul-de-sac. And I looked out the window and watched Melissa's champagne. Lexus swing wide and drive straight through Ellie's snow village. Not accidentally. Not because she slipped. She aimed snow. Exploded across our driveway, buttons scattered. The scarf slid into dirty slush, and Melissa slowed just enough to roll down her window and call out calm as a weather report, "Read your covenants, Mr. Carter." Then she drove off like she'd just returned a library book. Ellie didn't scream. She didn't throw a tantrum. She just cried in that quiet way kids do when they're trying to be brave. And she whispered, "Why does she keep killing them?" And I felt something in me switch from tired to focused, because I can handle someone insulting me. I can handle rules. I can handle paperwork. But the second you target my kid's joy, you're not dealing with a man trying to keep the peace anymore. You're dealing with a father who's done pretending. That night after Ellie fell asleep, I did what any blue-collar guy does when he realizes he's being played. I started reading everything. Covenants, bylaws, state filings, county records, management contracts. You name it, and that's when I found the part that made my stomach go cold. Our HOA wasn't just managed by a company. It was managed by Everstone Community Management, and one of the owners was Todd Granger, Melissa's husband. So every fine Melissa printed and taped to someone's door wasn't just punishment, it was profit. The clipboard wasn't a tool, it was a cash register. And suddenly all those dawn visits and photo attachments and measured tones made 6 cents. Once you see the machine, you can't unsee it. And I started noticing who got hit and who didn't. The same handful of houses getting hammered. Single parents, older residents, the family with the old work van. the couple who didn't fit the neighborhood vibe, while Melissa's friends somehow stayed invisible. I wasn't the only one seeing it either, because a firefighter named Marcus Lee stopped me at the mailbox one morning and said, low voice, like we were in a spy movie, "You think you're alone, you're not." Raj Mehta, the software guy down the street, introduced himself by holding up his phone and saying, "I track everything she does." I'm not kidding. Betty Harmon, retired teacher with the energy of someone who has shut down 1,000 teenage excuses, showed up with a folder thick enough to choke a horse I've kept every notice since 2019. She said then, "June Whitaker, sweet." June leaned in and whispered she destroyed my herb garden last spring and fined me for replanting. And her hands actually shook when she said Melissa's name. We started meeting quietly, not because we were plotting some movie villain scheme, but because when you're being targeted, you need community, and Melissa had worked hard to keep everyone isolated, scared, ashamed. And once you break that isolation, the fear starts to crack. Raj turned our stories into data spreadsheets. Dates. Fine amounts. Who got what. When for what, and it was ugly. Single parents like me got hit 4 or 5 times more often than perfect families. Older residents got slammed. Anyone who couldn't fight back got treated like an ATM. Melissa must have felt the shift because she escalated like a person who senses control slipping. First, she went after my work. An anonymous complaint appeared about my contractor truck being parked overnight. Not the other work trucks in the neighborhood mine. Then a letter accusing me of running an unauthorized home business because I stored supplies in my garage, threatening $500 per day. And I remember Ellie hearing me read it standing in the hallway with her hair messy from sleep. And she asked, "Are we moving again?" And it hit me like a punch, because that's what she was doing. She wasn't just being mean, she was trying to push us out. Then Melissa tried to shame me publicly at a neighborhood meeting under those awful fluorescent lights, with folding chairs and lukewarm coffee. She stood up with that fake, concerned smile and said, "Some households are experiencing lifestyle transitions that can impact community standards. Divorce situations can create instability," and her eyes landed on me like a spotlight. The room went silent. People suddenly found their shoes fascinating, and I felt my face burn, not from embarrassment, from rage, because she wasn't enforcing rules. She was enforcing a social hierarchy, and she was using my divorce as a weapon. The turning point came from June, and I'll never forget the way she looked when she knocked on my door that evening. She held her camera, like it weighed 100 pounds. Hands, trembling eyes, tired. And she said, "I'm done being scared of her." Then she showed me photos from her kitchen window, clear as day. Melissa's Lexus in the back alley, angled like a hunter. Then Melissa deliberately running over Ellie's rebuilt snowman. Behind our shed, you could see the scarf in one frame, then the crushed mitten in the next. And something about having proof changes you. It takes you from feeling crazy to feeling certain. That same week, Betty, bless her relentless teacher brain, dug into the original HOA documents from the county archive, and she found the clause that flipped the entire board, a sunset clause, 30 years of HOA authority, unless renewed by a supermajority vote. And Hawthorne Glen was filed in late February 1995, which meant the authority expired at midnight on February 27th, unless renewed, and the renewal meeting was scheduled for March 3rd. Let that sink in. Melissa had been strutting around like a queen, but her crown was literally on a timer, and she either didn't know or didn't care, and either way, it was about to matter. We could have told her immediately. We could have marched into her office and dropped the paperwork on her desk. But we didn't, because we'd learned something about bullies. They don't stop because you ask. They stop when the cost becomes public, though. We decided to let the clock run out, then confront her with witnesses. And I'm not going to lie. There was a part of me that wanted her to keep overreaching, because every extra notice, every extra threat, every extra early morning patrol under expired authority would make it clearer who she really was. The week leading up to February 27th, Melissa got reckless emails warning residents not to conspire weird blanket fines for group disruption. A private security guy strolling the sidewalks with a clipboard. Like this was some kind of suburban dictatorship. And still she couldn't resist Ellie's snowmen. It was like she was addicted to crushing something innocent, because it made her feel powerful. On the night of February 27th, Ellie looked at me with that kid seriousness that cuts through adult nonsense and said, "Can we build one more? Just one, where she can see it?" And I said, "Yeah, kiddo. Let's build the bravest snowman on the street." And we built a simple snowman out front. Button eyes, blue scarf. Nothing fancy. And Ellie patted the snow smooth and whispered, "He looks like he doesn't get scared." And I almost laughed because it was sweet and heartbreaking at the same time, so I told her, "He gets it from you." Midnight came. The HOA authority ended quietly on paper. No fireworks, no announcement, just a line in a document that suddenly mattered more than Melissa's whole personalities then at 6:08 a.m. Right on schedule, like she was a clock you could set your life by. I heard that Lexus engine, confident and loud, and I stood at my window with coffee heart thumping, because even when you know you're right, the moment of confrontation still hits your nervous system. Melissa rolled into our cul-de-sac like she owned the asphalt. She didn't slow down. She sped up and aimed straight at Ellie's snowman. And I'm going to be clear, because I know how people twist things. I didn't hurt her. I didn't damage her car. I set up a harmless front yard surprise earlier using standard yard equipment and a quick release timer, enough to soak her hood and windshield enough to make her look ridiculous. Not enough to hurt a soul. And the second her tires hit the spot, a sudden blast of bright blue water hit her, like the universe finally saying no. She slammed the brakes, jumped out dripping blue, like she'd been caught in a prank on live TV, and she screamed, "What did you do?" like I'd committed a felony against her ego, and I walked outside slowly with a manila folder calm. Because calm is what terrifies people who are used to control. She jabbed a finger at me, blue water dripping off her sleeve onto the snow. "This is vandalism. I'm calling the board." And I said, "Go ahead, but read this first." And she stepped closer, eyes wild. "You are going to regret." And I cut her off, loud enough for every phone recording. Because by then, the doors were opening. Neighbors were stepping out. People were holding up their phones. Like it was the Super Bowl. "Melissa, your HOA authority expired at midnight. You're not the president of anything." Her mouth opened, and nothing came out. And that silence was the first real crack I'd ever seen in her armor. I handed her the document with the clause highlighted. 30 years sunset clause. "It ended last night," I said. "Every fine you issue now is worthless, and pretending otherwise is fraud." And that's when June stepped onto her porch, voice shaking, but clear, and said the sentence that made my throat tighten. "I have photos of you running over children's snowmen, multiple times." And Raj raised his phone and added, "And I have the enforcement data." "Who you targeted, how often, and in Marcus firefighter," Com said. "City inspections already knows you've been threatening people with fake code issues, and..." Melissa looked around like she was trying to find her loyal audience, but the cul-de-sac wasn't silent anymore. Her kingdom of fear had witnesses. Right then, a patrol car pulled in. Deputy Alvarez stepped out, took one look at Melissa, dripping blue, took one look at the folder in my hand and said, "Darling, what's going on?" We didn't give him a speech. We gave him proof, the clause, the notices, the photos, the dates. And he read for maybe 15 seconds, then looked at Melissa with the kind of tired patience law enforcement uses on people who think they're special. If the covenant expired, you have no enforcement authority. He said, continued harassment becomes a legal issue, not an HOA issue. You need to stop contacting these residents. And Melissa tried to laugh, but it came out thin. I'm the HOA president, she said, and Deputy Alvarez didn't blink. Not if you're not, he replied. You should contact an attorney. That was it. That was the fall. No dramatic music, no courtroom speech, just a deputy stating reality in plain words, and Melissa's shoulders dropped like someone cut strings. She climbed back into her dripping Lexus, slammed the door, and drove away, leaving blue drops behind her, like a trail of defeat. Ellie appeared at the window beside me, eyes huge, and she asked Dad, "Is she gone?" And I crouched and said, "Yeah, kiddo. For now." And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Relief, real relief, like I could breathe in my own home. Now here's where it gets messy, because life always gets messy. After the victory moment, some neighbors quietly thanked me. Some hugged June. Some told Raj they'd been scared for years. But others, and this part still makes my jaw clench, acted like I was the villain for embarrassing Melissa. Like running over a child's snow village was just strict enforcement, and making her face consequences was too far. You know what I mean. By afternoon, her friends were posting online calling me unstable, saying I was teaching Ellie disrespect, saying I attacked a volunteer. And I remember reading those words and thinking, wow, so we're just going to pretend the volunteer part cancels out cruelty. And last night, I got a certified envelope in my mailbox with no return address, and I haven't opened it yet because I know Melissa doesn't lose quietly, and I know people like her always try to rewrite the story, where they're the victim and you're the monster. So I'm asking you honestly, because I want the real answer, not the polite one. If someone hides behind a system to bully people they think are weaker, and you find out the system was never as powerful as they claimed, what does justice look like? Do you keep your head down and take the high road while your kid learns that cruelty wins? Or do you make it loud enough that everyone finally wakes up, even if it makes you the bad guy in somebody else's story? Drop your take in the comments. Tell me if I crossed a line, or if I finally drew one, and if you've ever dealt with an HOA tyrant, a workplace bully, a neighbor who thought rules made them royalty. Share what happened, because somebody reading your comment needs that courage. Right now hit like if you believe power should have limits. Subscribe if you want more real stories, where bullies get exposed. And let's talk about it like adults down there, because I promise you, this kind of thing happens more than people admit.